Okay, so welcome back to my channel. Okay, this is going to be a recap of Cloak and Dagger's season 1, episode 4, Recall Response. So now Tandy and Tyrone are at the church and they're kind of comparing notes and still trying to figure out what is going on with them and why them, and you know, the whole thing. And so he was telling her a little bit about what he experienced with her, and as far as her father and the company Roxxon. So he mentioned Roxxon. He was like, yeah, that's the company my father worked for, that basically used him as a scapegoat, and they, you know, this, that, and the third. So next you know, you see Tyrone, he's at home, he's getting ready for school, and for some reason he snapped off on his parents. So his mother was talking to him. He came down and had his headphones on, so he wasn't really listening. And he walked by and his dad said, "Hey, what's going on? You know, your mother's talking to you this breakfast." And he said, "No, I'm good." He said, "No, just come on, sit down and have breakfast with us." And he was like, "No, I got things I need to do." Tyrone spelled himself. They just let him walk. I'm looking at them like, these black parents, and your child talk to you like that, and you just like. Anywho, so Tyrone, he grabs his bike and he get on the road. Tandy, she goes back home, and she didn't actually walk in. She knocked, I guess, and came with a peace offering, a cup of coffee. And so she sat down and was talking to her mom for a while, and she was asking questions about Roxxon, and the mom was like, well, basically it's telling her to know that the company was a greedy company that, you know, that used your father as scapegoat. You know, dead man can tell no tales. He's the one that died, so it was easier for them to pin everything on him. And as a result, that's why, you know, they lost any pension or retirement. They lost their home. They basically lost everything. And she said, well, you know, this is not just about us winning, you know, the money, which would be great, but this is about clearing your father's name. You know, they basically painted your father out to be this monster, and you know, I just can't, you know, we can't just leave that. And she said, well, Tandy was, well, you know, Mom, I don't think that Greg is the guy for the job. And she was like, well, Tandy, she just feels like, well, I'm not even gonna speculate. She basically said that Greg is just another married guy that's telling you what you want to hear because you have a great ass. She just has no respect or any faith in Greg and his intentions, and that says a lot because before she mentioned, like she said, that he's just another guy. So there's been a string of men that have come into their lives, come into her mother's lives, and under the pretense of trying to help her, and basically just used her. And so at this point, Tandy is just, she's like, I'm just ready to get off this wheel. And damn, Mom, aren't you ready to get off this wheel? And so around that time, Greg walked in. And he came in with a few bags of groceries, and so he put the food away, and the mom just stood there for a minute. She just walked away from Tandy, and Tandy is just sitting there, you know, like she just doesn't know at this point what to say. She doesn't have any faith in the system, and she doesn't feel like, because of the size of the company of Roxxon, like no matter what they do, it's not going to end well for them. So, okay, so after the conversation with her mom, it flashed back to Tyrone, and him and Avita, they're in like a dark room. And I don't know if he was having some photos or something developed, but he, you know, went in again on Avita. They started kissing, and we don't know what happened with that situation. And she was like, "Oh, I'm just trying to figure out." Avita was kind of taken aback. He said, "Why am I moving too fast?" She was like, "Well, no, that's fine. I'm just trying to figure out where this new Tyrone came from." And he was like, "Well, maybe, you know, this is the real me." I'm like, "Oh, okay." So they're back, and they flash back to the church where Tandy and Tyrone are still talking about their experience, and she started telling him about her experience with him and his brother. And you flash back to Tandy, and she's back in the kitchen, back at the trailer with Greg, and he's in the kitchen getting the food ready for dinner. And she was telling Tyrone that she's able to, when she touches people, she's able to see like their dreams and, you know, that whole thing. And so while she's talking to him, you still have the scene going on with her with Greg, and she went over to see. She was like, "Okay, so what's going on? Are you just an overall con man or what?" And he basically had to let her know, like, look, I saw what was in that bag. You're no saint. I used to work as a public defender. I know what's going on out here in these streets. You're not perfect. Neither am I. But basically just, give me a chance. So she walks over, to help him, and then she touches his hand, and then she was able to see that he's not this full of shit guy that she thinks he is. What she saw was this man and her mother, and he was talking about him getting a job in the kitchen as a chef because it seems like he has a passion for cooking. And he was talking about their pending nuptials, like they're engaged at this point. And so he wants to marry her mom, and so she was able to see that after touching him, that he's not the bad guy that she's making him out to be. Okay, so Tandy, she goes to Greg's office, and she starts talking to him about the Roxanne case, and he was like, "What, you mean the big con I'm trying to run on your mom?" And she was like, "Okay, if you're really serious about this, then I want to help." And so he starts talking to her about, these companies that are connected and how they're running finances from one company to another company. It's just a whole bunch of paperwork, a whole bunch of paper trails, and it's just a lot. And again, they're flashing between them in the church talking and, what's going on in their life in the present. So she was talking to Tyrone about how cons work, and she was saying that in order for you to catch this cop, you're going to have to get to know him. And that's how, what's one of the things of being a good con artist is that you get to know the person, you get close to the person, and you get basically the person to trust you. And which is a confidence game. And so he was like, you're going to have to, basically you have to get to know this guy. And she was saying something about him going to the police station to having a reason to go to the police station. I still couldn't really understand that. But I don't know if it was to see him or because he wasn't going to the police station to actually file a complaint on the cop. I don't know if he was just going there to see the cop, but had to come up with a reason to be there. And so he came up with, she said, in order for it to work, you have to create a narrative. And so what he did was he created the situation where he made it look like his bike was stolen. And so he went into and he did the whole process, went into the police station, and they assigned a cop to take down the report. And so while he was sitting there waiting for the cop to come back with the paperwork so he can do the report, he started to panic. And so it seems like everything was magnified. His phone's ringing was magnified. The paperwork being shuffling was magnified. The noise, the conversation, everything was just so loud, became so loud because he was just in a state. He's like, he even told her, like, I can't just walk into a police station. I'm a black boy in the South. First of all, I watched one shoot my brother, and I'm a black boy in the South. I'm always going to be seen as a thug. And so going in with that mindset, he just couldn't do it. He couldn't take it. So he actually got up and he got out of there as fast as he could. And the cop was kind of confused, looking like, what just happened? So he left. And you flash back to Tandy, and Tandy, he's still talking to Greg about the Roxanne case, and she noticed that he had put some files in a safe. And so she noticed the safe. She's like, okay. And so I don't know if she's trying to con Greg to get what she needs to get from him, or if she's really looking at him to help. She's looking to help him. And so she starts saying that they're boys have a hard time keeping their toys quiet, so she's like, maybe we could look at their social media. Like, she's throwing out some ideas that Greg didn't really think of. And so they flash back to Tyrone, and Tyrone, he makes it home, and he's in the kitchen, and his dad walks past him, is like, did you take care of the things that you needed to take care of? And he was like, he was about to apologize. He said, well, you know what, that's fine, because I was angry this morning too. I was so angry that I was about to go up to the room and take the door off the hinges. But I got halfway out to the shed and I turned around. No, I got to the shed and decided not to, and then I realized that my bolt cutters were missing. Do you know anything about that? And he was like, no. No, Dad, I don't, because he used the bolt cutters. He had chained his bike up, and then he used the bolt cutters to cut the chain to create the narrative that his bike was stolen. So after he said, no, Dad, I don't know anything about that, he grabbed Tyrone's backpack, opened it in there with the bolt cutters. And he was like, see, this is how things started with your brother. And Tyrone said, he is just out of pocket. He was like, I just want you to understand that when things are none of your business. And he was like, boy, I thought he was about to jet. But he was like, boy, come on, come with me. And Tyrone kind of stood there for a minute like, oh shit, he about to take me somewhere, fuck me. So he said, come on, now. And so Dad grabbed his coat, his jacket, suit jacket. And Tyrone, trailed on out behind him, and they left the house. And so Tyrone and his father, they're in the car headed to wherever they're going. And his father looks at him and says, okay, don't say anything to anybody unless they talk to you first. So he's like, okay. And so, of course, throughout this whole episode, it's been flashing back to Tandy and Tyrone being in the church, still talking. And Tandy was like, you know what? This all started that night in the cemetery, after she stole his wallet and he ran her down, and they touched, and there was this big explosion that threw them both back. And so she thought that I wonder what would happen if we touched again. And so they're standing up, and she's talking to him about this issue she has with closeness and being close to people and the whole thing. And so we flash back to Tandy. She's still at Craig's office, still helping him. It's getting late, and there's papers everywhere, and they're just talking, and she starts talking to him about his wife, and he's basically like, it's been over everything except the paperwork. And he starts telling her about how he feels about her mom, and how they just have a different relationship, and how they could just laugh about dumb shit, to silly stuff. They could just be with each other, and it's comfortable and refreshing. And so the next thing you see them, they're back at the trailer at the house, and they're about to sit down for dinner, and Greg's phone rang, and it's his wife. And initially he didn't want to answer it, and she was like, the mom got an attitude, was like, you should answer it because it's your wife. Like, she has an attitude. And he was like, nah, I don't want to. He said, you should go ahead and answer. And so he picks up the phone and answers it. He steps away from the table, and he was like, you know what, I don't want to talk about this right now. And so he gets off the phone with her, comes back to the table, and she was like, you know what, I'm really not hungry, so I'm going to say my good night. Good night now, whatever. And so I'm thinking to myself, bitch, you knew he was married. Like, what the hell? And then you getting the attitude about it because his wife is actually calling him. Anyway, so Tandy is sitting there. She didn't say anything. Her mom went on to the room, and he said, so what do you think about leftovers? She was like, well, we could just take it to the office, and we'll eat it tomorrow. He said, really? She was like, yeah. So she's gonna go back and help. And you can see Tandy, she's softening up to Greg. And so we flash back to Tyrone, and so they get to where they're going. It's just a house, and you go to this neighborhood, to this house. You have the men there out in the yard playing music and just, being merry. And so until he walks up, I think it's Otis, the father's name, and he walks up, and then they all stop, and they're all looking at him like they just want to rip his head off, the father. And so, of course, Tyrone is just sitting there because he don't know what the hell is going on. And so his father starts singing some song, and this older gentleman comes from the house, and he's just looking at him like, Negro, what the hell are you doing over here? And so he's singing some song, and I think the man started saying his response to whatever that response is to the song that he sung. And then he walks up to him and says, I should slit your throat. He pulls out a straight razor or a knife or something and puts it to his neck. And then, they laugh and hug, and it's this whole thing. He say, man, where you been? Where, why is it taking you so long to come back? And da-da-da. And so they end up going to the house. And so while they're catching up and talking, Tyrone is walking around, and he's seeing all these old photographs and all of these, beautiful costumes, these tapestries, things that, this group creates. And he called him a spy boy. So I don't know if the spy boy is the name of their little group, or if that's something related for the younger folks. I don't really know. But the older guy saw Tyrone looking at some of the photos, and he was like talking to him about spy boy. And so of course Tyrone's like, spy boy, what's that? And he's looking at him like, your father never told you? And he's like, no. He basically explained to him what a spy boy was and what they do. And basically they go out and they basically alert the people to pending danger. And they're brave and courageous and the whole thing. And so then you see his father standing and talking to him, and you saw this guy, he was making some beaded design. It was really pretty. And he was saying that every year they make a new one. And so Tyrone was like, every year you do this again? He said, yeah, because every year you're a different person. And so, you know, so a lot of them some go unfinished because, you know, people give up. And he's basically talking to him about the patience and the pride that it takes, that they put into their work, and learning how to bead. And he said it's something you have to learn every year, and it's a whole process. And he was like, basically, if you don't have patience, you're not going to be able to accomplish anything. And so Tyrone, he ventured off into this room to find one for himself, and then he comes across this cloak. And then, you know, but on the way, you saw all these beautifully colored costumes and all of these designs on the back. It was just really pretty. So, I mean, he said they put a lot of work into these costumes. So, I mean, that's something to be said. But it was also a good lesson that his father was trying to teach him, like all this anger and this frustration, and you making decisions before thinking, it's going to end all bad. So you have to learn patience, and you have to take the time and respect the process. So they're back at the church, and they're still talking, and she walks up to him, and now they're trying to see how close they can get to each other without, I guess, setting each other off. And so it was like they barely just grazed each other, and if you know, there was this explosion, and it threw both of them across the room. And so now they're like in shock, and they, you know, I mean, it's the same thing that happened when they were in the graveyard. And so they're basically talking about how they feel like when their powers are, I guess, activated, and they're, you know, basically comparing stories. So Tyrone, we're back at the house with Tyrone and his dad, and he comes out, and his father starts railing at him. He's like, "Why did you pick this one?" He said, "Well, Dad, you said that was the room where the throwaways were, where people didn't finish, and I like this one." He's like, "Well, no, you can't use that one. Give that to me." He was like, "Well, Dad, he said, why did you pick this one?" And he said, "Well, I don't know, because it spoke to me." And he stood there. The father stood there for a minute. He said, "That belonged to your brother." And so he kind of looked at him, and he said, "Dad, I want to keep it, and I want to finish it and make it perfect for him, and I want to march for him." And so his father, they sit down, and he starts helping him fix it up. And Tandy comes in, and because before the mom got up to go to the bed, she's like, "Well, I have a job interview in the morning, so I'm just going to turn in." And so now Greg is now gone. He went back to the office, and Tandy is there, and she was like, Tandy comes back in the house, and she said, "Not resting up for that interview, huh?" And the mom said, "We both know there's no interview." And, Tandy was, trying to talk to her and say, "I think that you're right about Greg." And no, she said, "I think that you were right about Greg." This is the mom talking to Tandy. And he said, "Well, no, I don't think so, Mom. I think that he's the real deal. I think he's trying to help." He said, "Well, it doesn't matter what you think. I just broke up with him." I'm thinking to myself, bitch, you knew he was married the whole time. You was all up on this man. You knew, so do you have a problem with the fact that Tandy likes him? I'm looking at this, and I'm like, is it because Tandy was starting to like him that somehow rubbed you the wrong way or something? I don't really know, because it just seemed weird to me that his wife calling him would set you off that much. And so, of course, at this point, Tandy is pissed. So she gets up and leaves, and you can see she's headed back to the office. And for whatever reason, she stopped, because you can see he has glass windows. You can see inside. And so he's moving some paperwork around. And then a woman comes in to change the water, which he thought was to change the water jug or whatever. And the next thing you know, she pulls a gun out and she blows Greg's head off. That shit was so sad to watch. And so, of course, Tandy saw that, and she starts crying, and she runs and hides. And then the woman what was actually in that jug wasn't water, it was gas. So she throws it all over the office and sets the office on fire. So now Greg is dead. The one person that was really trying, that cared about her mom and was really trying to help them, now he's gone. And so, you know, Tandy is just standing outside, terrified, just I guess waiting for this woman to leave. So that was sad to watch. Okay, so Tandy and Tyrone are still, like I said, this whole episode was basically going back and flashing back and forth between them in the church. And, you know, Tyrone starts telling her that, you know, sometimes he feels like, you know, he has to be perfect, that he has to live his life for two people. And she was saying how she's the opposite. She wished that she had been the one that died. And he was saying to her, you know, life isn't that bad. And she was basically saying, you know, that girl that you saw that was in the church passing out roofies, you know, in his dream where she was giving the people pills, they falling left and right. She said, that's me. That's how I get by. And, you know, basically, that was basically the gist of it. That's how I get by. And he's saying, well, life isn't that bad. Life isn't that hard. And so she's like, where do you live? You live in like a upper middle class. You live in the suburbs with two parents who love you, and you go to a private school. And he was like, I need you to check your privilege. She's like, my privilege. She's like, yeah. I have to steal this property because you can walk into any place. He's talking to her, and not be noticed. I can walk into a department store and it becomes an issue because basically all they see is a black man. And so they basically go back and forth, and she said, you know what, I saw your hopes as well. And you know what I saw? A boy who committed suicide by cop over and over and over again. So you have your own death wish, quiet boy. And so they kind of parted terms. So they parted ways on not on the best of terms. And so when he left, she ran over to her little stash and started popping as many pills and snorting as much as she could. And he went home and he worked out as much as he could, and then you flash to her after seeing Greg get his head blown off. She goes back to the house to tell her mom, and of course she's crying, but she hears her mom on the phone, and her mom is leaving a message for Greg, and she's like, well, you know, this is my sixth message, and you know how I get sometimes, and you know, I am sorry, and I think that we should talk. And she's on the other side of the door listening to this conversation because she knows that conversation is never going to come. She knows that her mom is never going to get a response from Greg because she just saw Greg die. And so now she has to tell her mother, a woman who's already hanging on by a thread, who already has a drug and alcohol problem, that the man that she cares about she's never going to see him again. And so what you see is the following morning, you see Tandy, she goes to the pier and she ties a chain around her legs and a rope around her arm, and she throws herself into the water. And then you see the light, and she comes back up and she uses the dagger to cut the rope from around her wrist. And I don't know if that was some type of her being reborn in her eyes, or some sense of that, like she has now, you know, cleansed herself, I guess, and has now found a reason to live. But she looked like she had discovered something from that whole situation. And then you see Tyrone walk into the police department like a boss. He asks for Officer O'Neill, and so now he's waiting for them to get her. And in the end, Tandy actually goes back to Greg's office because he had a separate place where she knew he hid some of his files. And so she was able to go in, and fortunately she was able, the Roxanne file was untouched by the fire. So she was able to go in and get that file. And that's basically how the episode ends. So yeah, a lot happened in this episode, but a really good episode. And yeah, so I am going to end this here, and I will talk to you guys in the next video.